Okay, good evening on behalf of Jammu and Kashmir Economic Association. It is my distinct honor and privilege to welcome you all for today's session. The political economy of agrarian change in Kashmir, innovation, exclusion, and smallholders' future. This is timely and important discussion brings to light critical issues which will be affecting rural livelihoods, agriculture transformation in our region, that is Jammu and Kashmir. We are extremely fortunate to have with us Dr.Ubaid Mushtaq, Assistant Professor of Economics, working at SRM University, Arunachal Pradesh, India. As our esteemed resource person, Dr. Mushtaq's extensive research on agrarian studies, political economy, public policy, particularly focusing on Global South, has earned him recognition in leading international journals and platforms. His work on state-led innovations and its impact on smallholder farming systems, offering valuable insights for policymakers, academicians, and practitioners alike. As we embark on this session, I like to share a quote that resonates deeply with today's theme. Innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. This quote is taken from Steve Jobs. With this spirit of innovation and critical inquiry, I invite Dr. Mushtaq to lead us into a stimulating exploration of agrarian change and its profound implications for Kashmir's future. Please join us in warmly welcome Dr. Mushtaq. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Firdous. Shall I share my screen? I have already sent you the request.
Yes, you. I think this permission we need to take. Please try now.
Yeah, it's fine now. Yeah, just give me a second. I will share my screen. Is it visible to everyone?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah. So good evening, everyone. I'm really pleased to join you today for this session organized by the Jindal Center for the Global South in collaboration with the Jammu and Kashmir Economic Association. My sincere thanks to Professor Hebatallah Adam and Dr. Firdous Ahmad Malik for their kind invitation and for bringing such a meaningful discourse and dialogue over the development and, of course, development, particularly in context of Kashmir and also in context of the Global South. And my name, as I have already been introduced, my name is Ubaid Mushtaq. I am working as an assistant professor in economics at Easwari School of Liberal Arts in SRM University, Andhra Pradesh. And I have titled this talk as The Political Economy of Agrarian Change in Kashmir, Innovation, Exclusion, and Smallholders' Futures. Now, over the next 30-40 minutes, I will share the reflections from my field research in Kashmir, which is still ongoing, and I have been doing it from last 4 or 5 years, where I have seen this agricultural modernization, especially through this new agricultural policies and schemes, has transformed not just productivity, but also it has transformed agrarian relations. It has transformed the idea of land use, the social hierarchies. And as we know that Jammu and Kashmir, and precisely Kashmir, is a region which is often missing from this broader policy conversations, be it on the agrarian history or the contemporary changes or the political economy of contemporary changes in agrarian economy. Precisely because of many reasons, considering its protracted conflict zone and its focus is mostly on the history and the conflict studies. So this particular theme has been broadly overlooked in the literature. And why it's important is precisely because it's a place where technological innovation is meeting these fragmented land holdings. I will come to that, how historically these land fragmented were and what created these small fragmented land holdings. And also it has its fragile rural economy, though mostly we're talking about in a stable middle class in Jammu and Kashmir, but My future research is actually debunking that argument that there is no something called a stable middle class in Jammu and Kashmir's economy. So this fragile rural economy is kind of coexisting with something called agrarian precarity, which I will be mostly talking about how it is happening and why that this particular process is happening in the broader agrarian structure of Jammu and Kashmir. And what I hope to share with you today is not just an empirical case, although my most of the work which I will be presenting will be based on empirical evidences, since it's kind of a methodological approach that we have to adopt in context of studying any policies or studying any political economy phenomena, considering that we need a strong empirical base to argue certain aspects of the changes. But I will not just present it as an empirical case, but as a story about how innovation is unfolding on the ground. And when I mean innovation, I am mostly talking about the agrarian innovation, and how this contemporary policy can and is enabling transformation and reproducing exclusion. And when I'm talking about it is reproducing exclusion, it's mostly about the smallholder farmers who are getting excluded from the agriculture, which has been broadly conceptualized as the de-agrarianization process in Latin American countries, which now I am sort of trying to bring those approaches here in context of global South and mostly in context of Jammu and Kashmir. And of course, I will look forward to your thoughts and connecting this work to the broader researchers who are working in Kashmir, and particularly in global South and in Kashmir and on agrarian studies or on the Kashmir economy itself, and see what are the implications of these kind of approaches when we are talking about agrarian change in Kashmir. Now, let me go to the full screen mode. Now, actually, before moving into the idea of this presentation, I want to give you the meaning of some essential terms. Because why? Because I will be using these terms mostly in my presentation, and also this is for the general audience who may not be familiar with the terminologies that we agriculture economists or agrarian studies scholars use. So that's why I thought I will give you a broader overview of these particular concepts or these particular terms, so that it will be easy for us to follow the presentation when we will move forward. So as we know that smallholder, when we are kind of trying to define smallholder farmers, smallholder are those farmers which have less than 2 hectares of land. So this particular definition is mostly working in the context of India, considering that we have lower national average land holdings. And these smallholder farmers are accounting for 86.2% of all farmers, and surprisingly, they just own around 48% of variable land. And the primary focus of smallholder farming, as most of us will be knowing, is subsistence, with production aimed at meeting the family's food needs and essentially for the food security. And when we are talking about smallholder farmers, it is these who are facing the brunt of agrarian innovation, which I will be talking later on. And when I will be using the terms of agriculture innovation, of course, you will use agriculture innovation as the technology and scientific practices which are now mostly being adopted in agriculture. But I would kind of argue that it's not just about the technology, it's about the institutions, it's about the power, and it's about the governance, which are kind of interacting with this particular agrarian innovation and putting up a broader dimensions in the agrarian economy. Also, the political economy of agrarian change, which is the title of my talk also. Now, political economy has been conceptualized by many scholars differently, be it a classical foundations of classical political economy of agrarian change by Marx and Lenin, which mostly talk about the primitive accumulation. And then came the dependency approach, which were mostly talking about the core periphery debates, mostly the modernization debates and dependency approach, which was kind of used in agrarian studies as well. But I won't be kind of touching these classical foundations, because once you are touching the idea of primitive accumulation, bringing in class, bringing in materialism, then it will open a Pandora's box where we will not be actually understanding what is happening in the contemporary political economy of Kashmir. So instead, what I have done in my research is that I have used this political economy as an approach mostly deriving from the contemporary theorists of political economy, mostly Barrestine and Boras and Kay, which are working on agrarian extractivism in Latin America. So one of my papers talks about this agrarian extractivism and how I have conceptualized this particular concept in context of Kashmir also, which is easily available online. So this political economy of agrarian change, I am kind of using it as an interaction of economic structures, political institutions, and policy interventions, especially how they are interacting and how they are shaping this agrarian transformation. And with that, I am kind of linking it with something called new agrarian question. So I'm not sure if any of the person will be having an expertise in agriculture economics or agrarian studies precisely. There has been this traditional agrarian question within Indian context also, which was mostly led by Bahaduri and others in context of India, where they were actually looking at whether agriculture has a capitalist transition or not. And this particular debate, this traditional agrarian question, it remained inconclusive in Indian academia because some scholars argue that there is no peasantry in India. So this particular agrarian question, which is now being termed as a traditional agrarian question, remained inconclusive because there was no conclusive evidences to prove that there is agrarian question. And then these Latin American scholars mostly and this contemporary political economists, they frame out something called the new agrarian question. So now what new agrarian question does is it basically brings the framework in the classical political economy and then using these framework under the contemporary global capitalism. Right. So now we are seeing how contemporary global capitalism is interacting with land, labor, capital, and of course smallholder farmers, and what sort of interactions it actually happens with the contemporary global capitalism, and of course neoliberal economies, how they operate in terms of this new agrarian question. And of course, I will also be using something called agro-extractivism, which is one of the studies which I have done in context of Kashmir. So when we are talking about agro-extractivism, we are mostly focusing on these agricultural practices which are focused on intensive extraction of natural resources for exports. So now we are kind of, the state is seeing agriculture as a kind of extractivist industry. And this framework, of course, this emphasizes about monocultures, the monocultural cropping. Most of you will be aware that there has been a widespread palm oil cultivation across Indonesia and Malaysia and also across Thailand, which has led to deforestation and many ecological challenges. That is kind of a form of agro-extractivism where state is incentivizing you to cultivate those kind of crops and giving kind of subsidies on those crops, precisely because it wants to create an extractivist industry. So, and by creating an extractivist industry, you have to focus on intensive monocultures, only one crop. Why? Because then it will have a high exports, input and export orientation that will be kind of used in this framework. So now understanding this dynamics between agro-extractivism and smallholder farming is crucial for developing policies or for kind of supporting this sustainable agricultural development and protect rural livelihoods and ensure kind of food security. Now, these are the key concepts which I will be using in the during the course of my presentation, and the broader overview of what exactly these concepts mean for those who are not who may not be from this from this particular field of study. Now let me shift with these concepts in mind. Let me shift to something called like what is the broader global picture. And when I'm talking about the broader global picture, I'm mostly talking about the broader picture in the global south. So as we know that in recent decades, agriculture system around the world and mostly around the global south have undergone significant transformations. In many developing regions, this agrarian transformation can be seen as an outcome of commercialization, technological changes, market integration, or access to input-output markets, or policy and institutional changes, and also the adoption of new agrarian technologies, which I was talking about in the key concepts. And these kind of transformations have triggered a shift in the farming system. So now, traditionally, the subsistence farming orientation has now been led into something called specialized market-oriented systems. And this particular market-oriented system, it's itself leading to something called significant changes in the farming practices. And with those significant changes in farming practices, we can see that there has been a displacement and marginalization of smallholders in these transitions. Why? Because the typical economists will argue that you won't be able to achieve economies of scale, so you will actually not cultivate the land. But it has its broader implications, because it has a broader implication that I will be talking in the later part of this particular presentation. But as we can see that these kind of a changes also necessitate adjustments in all aspects of agriculture system. It can bring in change in the economic orientation, peasant relations, rural socio-economic setup, and also essentially the food sovereignty debates or food sovereignty movements across these farming sectors. Now, there has been many academic perspectives through which these particular issues have been dealt with. Over the period of time, scholars have been understanding this agricultural transformation, mostly focusing on these commercialization processes and emphasizing welfare gains and income inequalities, primarily through the perspective of methodological individualism. So when we are talking about neoclassical economics, how any neoclassical economist will approach this particular issue is mostly through the orientation of methodological individualism. So one may argue that, okay, farmers need to switch or need to adopt to a particular farming because that's in a way a welfare-based approach, right? So that is the whole debate within the neoclassical economics. I don't want to get into that, but I want to give you a broader overview of that's how economists have looked at this particular issue. And then, additionally, there have been studies which are under the domain of broader agrarian studies, which have examined these transformations through the lens of capitalist progress and also the technological advancement, which are often debated in under the traditional agrarian or classical agrarian question, which I was talking about in the key concepts. Even in Indian context, also we had a broader agrarian question way back in 1960s, 70s, led by Bahaduri and others, which remained inconclusive. Now, with these particular perspectives, there has been also one more perspective that is emerging, which mostly talks about extractivism and smallholder exclusion. As I was talking about, there are contemporary political economists in economics, in agrarian studies, which argue that this agrarian extractivism and position the kind of state's role in this developmental model. So, as we know that agricultural, agriculture is going through this capitalistic transitions, and new market linkages and rapid technological adoption are reshaping these farming systems. And in some cases, as we can see, that this has brought a higher productivity. Okay, so when a state is intervening in particular agrarian context, it's mostly for the productivity dimension, and of course, income will also be there, but mostly focus is on the productivity dimension. And this particular process has increased the productivity in some cases and integrated the markets. But with the same process, it has also a tendency of displacing the smallholders and kind of deepening this inequality that is there in the agrarian system. Now, how I'm kind of using this multi-scalar lens in order to understand the dimensions of Kashmir's agrarian structure. So I'm categorizing it because it's a broader research that I'm doing in one of the projects, and also my PhD thesis was on a similar topic, and the other two projects are running on a similar topic. So I'm kind of trying to develop these dimensions of Kashmiri's agrarian structure on three levels: micro, meso, and macro levels. When I'm talking about micro levels, we'll be mostly borrowing from neoclassical economics, mostly the individual farmer's decision. Why farmer is adopting a particular innovation, technological innovation, or particular agriculture policy? What are the reasons? What are the factors that push him towards adopting these certain choices in terms of crops, in terms of resource allocations, or in terms of income strategies? But if I would have kept it at that level only, understanding that why farmers adopt, it would not have given me a clear picture of what exactly is happening at the meso level. When I'm talking about the meso levels, I am talking about the institutional influence. And institutional influences primarily means the role of state, the role of policies, the role of local markets, corporates, or precisely the agriculture extension services. And now this agriculture extension services has been a predominant kind of an institutional influence within the broader agrarian landscape of Jammu and Kashmir. Because why? If a government is floating up in certain agricultural policies, it needs kind of a broader communication or broader, wider audience to reach. And for that, agriculture extension services are considered as something which can actually link these broader policies with different farmers. But again, when I'm talking about the micro level, I'm talking about the meso level. There is a broader macro level also emerging, which is mostly talking about the structural pressures. So you can see there has been a global market demands. There is an export-oriented production, economic policies. Now you must have we have also, though that's not the part of the study, but we have also studied like how in the leap year period, India has mostly rely on imports of apples from global markets and not from Jammu and Kashmir and these Shumla regions, precisely because there is a different global market demand that operate at the same levels, and which is creating a broader, different kind of an orientation altogether, which is the export-oriented production, and also the economic policies, like how these kind of a macro level policies are affecting the broader agrarian structure within Jammu and Kashmir. So I am studying this now. I am studying these individual experiences with institutional dynamics and structural pressures together. So that only I am talking about the contemporary political economy of agrarian change in Kashmir. So I am studying all these three dynamics and kind of amalgamating them together to give a broader overview of what is happening in Kashmir's agrarian structure, in the contemporary agrarian structure. Now, as a traditional rationale for the study, we often economists or other social scientists, we have to give a rationale of a particular study, why we are doing this particular study. There have been multiple reasons why understanding this interaction of transformation and smallholder dynamics is essential, precisely in context of Himalayan region like Jammu and Kashmir. Precisely for multiple reasons. One being historic. And when I'm talking about the historical reasons, I think most of us who are from Kashmir will be knowing that the region underwent one of the most radical land reforms in South Asia, which kind of governed its political structure also in terms of Sheikh Abdullah's national conference and all. So this Sheikh's vision of giving this land to the tiller program in 1950s was considered as one of the successful land reforms across India. Apart from Operation Barga in West Bengal and some land reforms in Kerala, but mostly the case of Jammu and Kashmir was that land was given to the tiller and not to the tenant. So that's precisely it made it one of the famous land reforms of South Asia at that point of time. Though much of the literature not talks about it, because then we are kind of bringing in political orientations and other stuff, but this was a landmark redistributive policy, and it dismantled the larger estates and kind of transferred these land to the cultivators who were cultivating the land. So that's why we are calling it land to the tiller policy. Now, with this deep rooted land reform legacy, what it did is it created a hyper fragmentation of land holdings. So obviously, if you are giving a land to the tiller over the period of time, land holdings will decrease. Obviously, the population is increasing. The average operational land holding size will of course decrease. So if you look at the national average in India, it's 0.5455 hectares, which has now reduced more because we don't have a data. And in context of India, it's 1.66 national average, and in context of Jammu and Kashmir, it's just 0.54 hectares of average operational land holding size. And in some of the districts, in the one of the agroclimatic zone in Kashmir, this particular average land holding size is much lesser than this. It's around some 0.1 hectares only, particularly in districts of uh, Kulgam and Gandrabal, where the average land holding, I will show you the data also where the average land holding has decreased over the period of time. Now, obviously, when you are bringing these successful land reforms, it has a tendency in a pure economic sense that it will create a hyper fragmentation of land holdings. Now, if there's a hyper fragmentation of land holdings, it will eventually have a constraint on productivity. It's quite simple economic concept that you won't be able to achieve economies of scale on your farm, and your productivity will decrease, your resource cost of inputs will increase, and so is the cost of mechanization. So farming itself will become unviable over the period of time. But as we all know that there was a stable commercial horticultural economy of Jammu and Kashmir. And if you look at the data from 53, 54 to 2019, that was the last data point that we have kind of achieved this agricultural commercialization, or mostly focusing on the commercial horticulture, to roughly around 160, 170% in context of changing from subsistence to commercial horticulture. Now, there have been multiple reasons for this. One is that people are kind of transitioning from subsistence-based to commercial horticulture. But that would have itself given rise to different problems, like the issues of food security and others. But the most important part that has happened is in context of role of state-driven technology. So now state is kind of subsidizing and giving these market orientation schemes to kind of reshape these rural land use changes. And with that, it's also bringing in different agrarian policies which are kind of interacting with this particular structure. Now, if you look at this particular data table, we have kind of tried to capture the changes in agricultural land use and the shift towards commercial farming. So we have used the data from 2009 to 2019. That was the last data point that we have. After that, after 2019, there was no data available. And last agriculture census was also in 2016. So after that, we couldn't actually capture what is happening in the agrarian structure. But if you specifically look at the decrease in field crop area, so we have used field crop area as in context of two crops, paddy and maize, which is the essential crops in context of Jammu and Kashmir, essential field crops. And to take we have used other three horticultural crops, which are mostly the primary horticultural crops across Jammu and Kashmir. And we have for this particular district analysis, we have only selected these districts because they frame under the one agroclimatic zone. So we could not have taken districts from Jammu also because they fall under the different agroclimatic zone. And then we tried to see what is happening in terms of percentage decrease in field crop area and percentage increase in horticultural crop area. And if you see, there are three districts which have kind of significant changes. Pulwama, Kulgam, and Gandrabal. But if you look at the average of all the districts, it's falling. It's minus 15.7%. So that means there has been a percentage decrease in field crop area cultivation. So that means, in a way, we can say that there has been a decrease in subsistence-based farming. But has it been reflected in terms of horticultural adoption? That means if a farmer is kind of shifting towards subsistence-based to commercial agriculture, is it being reflected in the larger data? The answer is no. So where is this land going? there could be multiple reasons for this. So that is a different part of the research. I won't get into that, but right now we have seen that there is a percentage change in field crop area which is decreasing rapidly, raising a question mark on food security of sustainability and food security of farmers. But it is not being easily converted into something called horticultural crop areas. Okay. Now, I want to give you this kind of in policy trends now in terms of what has happened. Why then government is intervening in terms of subsidizing these farmers, and what happens with these subsidies, whether they are going in the right direction or whether they are creating a process of exclusion. If you look at these horticultural trends in Jammu and Kashmir, you can see that area expansion is of course increasing. That I was shown in the earlier table also. In terms of compound annual growth rate, the area and production is of course increasing. But if you look at the yield, it's still in negative figures. So that means you are increasing the area on a larger level as compared to the production. That comes to the essentially the quintessential debate in economics, that we have decreasing productivity and increasing area. So now what will state do? State will try to implement those policies which will increase the production and bring under the ambit of its policies these smallholders, and or mostly the large holders and smallholders together, and create a sort of commercialized agriculture. And with that, recently, I want to give you this idea of this particular policy precisely because then I will connect it with the broader agrarian transformation that is taking place, the contemporary agrarian transformation that is taking place. So now there was this major challenge in Kashmir's horticulture sector as well, that there was a low yield per hectare despite this land expansion. And there have been these fragmented land holdings that I was talking about, essentially precisely because of land reforms. And extension network was also weak. That's what state argued, that you have a weak extension ecosystem. That's why farmers are not adopting certain schemes. And that's the reason, that's why the productivity is decreasing. But if you look at the broader picture in the global south and precisely in India, we have made changes in terms of production is increasing, but farm income is not increasing as much as production is increasing. So that's the wider debate in Indian agriculture. I don't want to touch that, but that kind of a concept will also be workable in context of Kashmir, like why it is happening, why state is mostly focusing on productivity gains and not on income gains. So for that, this state created something called this high density plantation scheme, which it was launched in 2020, and after that it was revised in 2024 also, and 2016 also. And it has a budget of some 1 to 2 crore rupees a year, which they are mostly disseminating to the farmers. And it is mostly based on something called public-private partnership, where these private firms are importing these root stocks from Scandinavian countries, mostly through the large import subsidies, and giving the large import subsidies on these. And then they are kind of, through their extension networks, they are trying to kind of motivate the farmers to kind of convert their traditional agricultural land, field crop land, into these high density plantation schemes, which is only about the apple crop, monoculture of apple, which is taking place there in Kashmir. And with that, there has also been kind of an extension services and imported root stocks and market linkages. They're talking about bringing in cold storage changes, which is not part of this policy, but a broader agricultural policies which state often talks about. And if you look at the the assimilation of this particular scheme, this 50% government is giving subsidy for the farmers, and it's asking 40% to be borne by the banks, and only 10% has to be borne by the farmers. So now what it actually is doing is it's kind of incentivizing farmers to adopt and shift their subsistence farmers to these high density plantation schemes. Now, what are the problems with that? We have studied, we have studied in the broader economics that, okay, if the productivity gains will increase, farm income will also increase. So that is precisely the idea. That's precisely the idea that in context of farm production, farm income should also increase, and that will bring out the overall larger welfare for the farmers. But the question remains, which farmers? Considering the considering the average land fragmentation, average land holding size in Jammu and Kashmir, will it be a response to the production, or will it be a response to something called price or something called farm income? Now, we do, for this particular talk, we have I have kind of studied this role of extension service in shaping this adoption and agrarian behavior, and how does this access to innovation improve the farm income and entrepreneurship abilities, and what social and policy process emerge from these transformations. Though it's a part of the broader research which I have been doing, as I was talking about, at the different levels. But we have used it in an empirical strategy where we are kind of collecting the household surveys, looking at those who are adopting this particular scheme, those who are not adopting. I'm also doing some in-depth interviews with farmers, officials, extension workers, and then, of course, at the need of the hour, we are also using some methodological stands, mostly in terms of probit models and treatment effect models, in terms of measuring this farm income and productivity, and what exactly leads to the adoption of these particular studies. So I'll be talking more about the methodology if there are any questions related to methodology later on. Since this is a talk, I don't want to spend most of the time in context of defining the methodology. But if you have any questions, you can always come back to me at the later end of this project. And we try to kind of estimate this influence of extension access and HDP adoption, and kind of we try to model these equations, like what exactly is happening and why farmers are adopting to this particular scheme. And we used something called the recursive bivariate probit model. And if some of the economists here will understand that we use primarily this kind of a model to remove the endogeneity issues. So if you can see this particular model, the dependent variable of the first equation will become an independent variable of second equation. So farmers who are participating in the extension services also will be the farmers who are adopting to these high density schemes or these new agricultural policies. So then we are jointly trying to see what are the effects of this particular kind of scheme in context of Jammu and Kashmir. And now these were the selected variables. I think we'll talk about it later on if there are any questions. And this is the profile of these surveyed households and kind of determinants of high density adoption and extension services. So when I'm talking about this descriptive stats, we have seen that this new high density plantation adopters are mostly an average young and more educated, with greater risk tolerance and access to, and of course they have access to the institutional credit. And interestingly, also they cultivate these small plots than those who are non-adopters. But if we look at the key findings of our this recursive bivariate probit model, econometrically, extension access remains the strongest predictor of high density plantation. So in a way, we are kind of arguing that it's because of the extension services which are influencing farmers to adopt this particular scheme, mostly followed due to the reasons of subsidy and credit availability. So you are incentivizing farmers to take the subsidy and take the credit and adopt this particular farm scheme. And education is also a significant factor in context of it is giving a positive coefficient, and land size and non-farm income are all surprisingly are insignificant. So what it actually does is it leads to the broader debate that it reinforces kind of an institutional embeddedness and not wealth, or which drives the adoption. So that by that, let me simplify this kind of an econometric results. You see that we can argue that it's mostly because of credit and subsidy availability that farmers are adopting to a particular agricultural policy. And land size and non-farm income are insignificant in context of adoption. So that is precisely what we are actually carrying forward in this particular analysis. And as the broader inference can be seen that extension access is not automatic, but it is shaped by the structural and locational advantages. And adoption is driven by extension access and institutional connectivity, and not merely on wealth and land size. Also, we tried to find out that whether these kind of, and when we are talking about these are mostly the young farmers who are adopting to this particular scheme precisely because of credit and subsidy availability. Whether these agripreneurs, whether these farmers can be termed as something called agripreneurs, which mostly the state kind of promotes as their agricultural policies has led to something called agriculture entrepreneurship. We kind of tried to study this particular phenomena through various kinds of understandings in terms of agripreneurship or transformative shift towards agripreneurship or small scale farmers. And we saw, yes, there has been some sort of smallholder agripreneurship that is happening. So there has been attitudinal changes, and there has been the adoption of new agricultural practices, which is mostly driven by young farmers. So whether to call this as agricultural entrepreneurship or not, I will lead to a question mark in that, because we don't have enough data to actually claim that kind of an argument that this is happening. But of course, looking at this particular econometric model, we are giving the indication that mostly these farmers are young farmers. Then we also tried to see whether these kind of schemes or extension services are kind of driving the farm income, whether it has its effect in context of farm income. And we have seen that state-led extension has improved income, but it has remained modest. So claiming that, I will be discussing these results if anyone wants to talk about this in the later part, but right now it's little heavy econometric, so I don't want to get into in terms of numbers and all. But overall, the idea is that a state is incentivizing farmers through credit and subsidy in terms of adoption of particular agriculture scheme. This agricultural scheme is mostly adopted by smallholder farmers. Not smallholder farmers, as young farmers. Mostly young farmers, and these young farmers are itself driven by something called a credit and subsidy, and they are showing a tendency of risk. Kind of, they are more risk appetite. They have more risk appetite. That's why they are adopting to this particular scheme. But when we look at the farm income, of course, we need a larger longitudinal or panel data set to increase that, to kind of measure that farm income in kind of a data set. But looking at the cross-sectional data set, it doesn't increase farm income, and it has remained as very modest. Now, these were the kind of econometric results which give us a broader kind of a picture that why certain agricultural schemes are being adopted, and what happens, and who are those who adopt these, and what happens after adoption, whether the farm income is increasing, or it is remaining stagnant, or it is remaining modest. So that particular phenomena that we have actually explored in our econometric analysis. But at this kind of a stage, let's step back and ask, what do these transformations tell us about the political economy of innovation in Kashmir, or political economy of agricultural innovation in Kashmir? So you are seeing this high density farming has kind of recently it has become one of the flagship projects of agrarian modernization in Jammu and Kashmir. Those who are from Kashmir very well know this, that high density farms have become an sort of flagship or a landmark for any kind of an agrarian modernization. And it has changed, it has very much changed the agrarian landscape, where both even the fertile paddy lands are being converted into high density farming, mostly the apple crops. But as we have seen in the broader kind of a deep down research at a very micro level, we have seen this. It has changed the very landscape of the cultivation, as we must be aware, all of us. And this change kind of carries the double movement. It kind of one is of the growth and one is of the exclusion. And we have seen the emergence of monocropping happening. Apple orchards are replacing these diverse local crops, and farmers who were once cultivating these pulses and vegetables are now dependent on a single market commodity, which is kind of in which is obviously apple in context of Kashmir. And that shift kind of promises higher returns, but it also reduces resilience. That what I have been arguing, that it may give you a higher return promises, but it reduces resilience. Why? Because in the event of market shock, or like for example, recently there was a blockage of national highway due to these landslides and all, and due to climate stresses. These kind of market shocks or climate stresses or smallholders, or also the smallholders have fewer buffers, because if you are kind of cultivating one more less than two acres of land, there is no point of keeping your production in a cold storage. So there are few buffer options also available, that you can go and take your produce to a local cold storage chain. And then these processes, what they have done, one of my paper talks about it in the developmental practice. These kind of processes has led to something called land consolidation. So now smallholders, in trying to participate, are kind of leasing out or pooling out this land. It has mostly happened in context of one of the districts, Pulwama in Jammu and Kashmir, where there has been a significant kind of a reversal from the land to the tiller legacy. So agrarian structures still matter, but those who have land and capital are scaling up fast. And those who don't have a capital and those who don't have a much land, they are unable to scale up. And finally, this extension services remains unevenly distributed, because innovation has reached many, but not to all. So what we can actually think about is the key insight is that innovations benefit depend not only who is adopting, but by whom and under what conditions they are adopting. And without an equity lens and kind of an modernization risk, it will enforce these old hierarchies in new forms. So mostly I'm talking about this paradox of agrarian innovation, where growth without justice will lead to exclusion of the smallholder farmers. And that also brings us the central question, that what is happening to the land and livelihoods beneath this rhetoric of some agricultural policies bringing more welfare to the to the farmers in Kashmir. So it has kind of, we have seen in our data that it has set up a motion which is the kind of land consolidation. So to meet these technical and financial requirements, farmers are now begun leasing, pooling out or selling out small lands. And the larger operation land holdings are getting kind of conglomerated into fewer hands. So though it is initially, it will be a little difficult to claim that using the larger data set, because we don't have any secondary data point in context of Kashmir. And from a primary survey, there will always be questions about whether it is really happening or not. But once we will get the census data, which will be released soon, and NSSO 77th round, which talks about the agriculture census. So we will get an agriculture census, of course, we will get a broader picture of what has happened over the period of 5-10 years, about whether this has actually kind of given rise to the larger operational land holdings, and whether it has actually, smallholders are actually affecting using the larger kind of data. And smallholders have also becoming now this kind of a credit controlling mechanism, where they are becoming contract laborers or share partners. And this is what has been termed the depeasantization in the traditional agrarian literature. And this is also been compounded in context of 2019, after context of 2019 debates that has led to the different agrarian debates in context of Kashmir. And Now, actually, we have also seen in our data that food security implications are also increasing. And the data showed us a clear pattern where we have seen that food crop cultivation, particularly in the context of paddy, pulses, maize, and oil seeds have sharply decreased. So that is a larger data that tells us. And this has two consequences. Firstly, broader scholars who are working in agrarian economy, they will argue that it undermines the local food sovereignty. So villages which were once self-sufficient are in staples are now depending heavily on something called imports from different markets. And second, it increased the market vulnerability also. So when income and food both depend on volatile markets, as I was talking about, shocks, even if smallest, are striking hard to the smallholder farmers. So one of our surveys, we found that small farmers have reported an average of 8 months of food security compared to the 12 months with the larger farmers. So this particular gap is not simply economics, it is structural, that I am arguing. That why? Because the very design of these innovation policies are pushing smallholders out of these subsistence safety nets into kind of cash-based dependency. And so we must ask this question, does promoting these export-oriented horticultural crops comes at the cost of local food security? Now, there is a wider debate in economics that will argue the cash versus kind transfer debates, or be it debates around MSP. So that is a wider debate in Indian agricultural scenario also. I don't want to touch that. But in context of Kashmir, it has its broader implications, because as I was initially talking about, that we have a very small land fragment holdings. And over the period of time, if there is a continuous process of this de-agrarianization and de-peasantization, it will eventually lead to something called land consolidation into a larger chunks of the land with kind of in corporate farming and all. And so this is one of the kind of a crop diversity index that we have used in our research. The crop diversity CDI lower means that it is tending more towards monocropping, and for large farmers, CDI is 0.10, and for medium it's 0.42, and for smallholders it's 0.60. So in other words, we can say that smallholders are maintaining this diversity, but at the cost of their income and food security. Now, let me conclude this kind of an issue with the thesis of uh, pulling these threads together. So the overarching thesis emerging from this study is that from the Kashmir's broader agrarian experience, and is what I call the policy paradox for innovation. You have seen that state, through its extension and these new agricultural policies like high density subsidies, they are generating kind of incentives for farmers to modernize. But this produces some visible outcomes also: adoption, production gains, and new entrepreneurship, which we are, of course, seeing in the data. But yet, these gains are not concrete among the better resourced, among those who are not better resourced. And land consolidation and food sovereignty are remaining the broader issues, as crop diversity has declined and income polarization has also grown. So for smallholders, the same policies that promise empowerment often induce depeasantization, which has happened in context of many Latin American countries. So they exist cultivation, land laws, and shift to the wage labors is also emerging, and food security is weakening. That is kind of an established fact now in context of Jammu and Kashmir. So thus, this innovation is becoming a kind of engine and the expression of inequality, and it kind of embodies the state's developmental ambition with kind of it needs a redistributive correctness, of course, and because it risks reproducing these exclusions that we have seen are evolving. And so actually, where do we go from here is, how does an inclusive agriculture look like in Kashmir? In short term, the priority is accessibility, targeted subsidies for smallholders, simplified credit through microfinance. But Problem is that there is a larger de-agrarianization process that is happening, which many of you must be observing. And in the long run, even if the institutional strengthening is taking place, it won't lead to those kind of results which will bring a rapid, wider agrarian change in Kashmir. And in the long term, these challenges are also kind of structural, because securing tenure rights or to prevent speculative land transactions, that can also happen, of course, after the 2019 abrogation and kind of a land change of the land rights. And beyond policy, there is also a research agenda, like tracking these agricultural policies and what are its long-term impacts on labor, on gender, and of course on nutrition outcomes. And now, so to return to my title, the political economy of agrarian change and innovation. What we have seen today is a very microcosm of this particular phenomena. So innovation is represented by high density and state-led modernization. It is a driver, but it is also a form of exclusion for the smallholder futures. And the challenge for us to ensure that both innovation does not become kind of a new form of extraction, because it will lead to a pathway for equity on one hand and exclusion on the other. So with that, I will stop here. Thank you so much for your time. And if you have any questions, you can type directly in the chat box, or you can ask.
Dear participants, now the session is open. We would like to welcome all the participants who are eager to ask any question. They can just simply raise their hand and on their mic themselves. They can also, open the video and have direct communication with our resource person. So please go ahead. Meanwhile, if the participants are coming with the question, I am having some observations I would like to share. So as you have highlighted that most of the sufferers are micro small landholders. As per the model was talking about that you have done investigation of micro landholders, then meso, then at micro level, what is happening.
Right.
So as new commercialization, new trend towards commercialization or transition towards hybrid technology and all, so most sufferers are the micro one. So how can technology and innovation practices help to those micro small landholders so that their socio-economic we can say situation will not be impacted negatively?
Right. Uh, that is the broader question that we are asking in agriculture economics. But in context of Kashmir, I would say that, okay, if there have been certain agricultural policies which are primarily in context of helping increasing the farmers' productivity or farm income, it has to take into consideration the land holdings within the Jammu and Kashmir. Because most of our farmers are smallholder farmers, which are not cultivating more than 2 acres of land. And having this top-down approach of agricultural policies and asking them to implement it is something which can bring different repercussions altogether in the agrarian economy that we are seeing over the period of time. The average land holding size is decreasing in many districts, and it has reached to 0.1 hectares in Kulgam district. And also in Gandharbal district, it is reducing rapidly. Why these changes are happening? Some can argue that, okay, there is a widespread construction going on. It's like mostly it was the grazing land, which is now being converted into different colonies and all. But here we are talking about mostly the cultivable arable land. And those cultivators are mostly smallholder farmers. And for them, it is essential for us to mostly not rely on subsidies or incentivizing them more to adopt a particular scheme, rather than focusing on their subsistence, rather than focusing on their food security. Because if you see any smallholder farmer kind of adopting to a particular agricultural scheme, may not lead to a broader economies of scale, which is a traditional argument in economics, considering the farm size, productivity, and all the typical argument in agriculture economics. So I would say that we have to kind of empower smallholders and safeguard their diversity, and also restore this balance between growth and justice, or growth and development precisely.
Okay, thank you very much. I am having one more, counter follow-up till we get some questions from the participants. So it is regarding this, you have beautifully, developed the study between micro, meso, and macro. So as per the, supply and demand mismatch is there always. What
Right, right.
farmers actually demand and what meso as an institution they are providing them. And similarly, because of ecological, differences, Kashmir is having different weather and agriculture environment as per the land is concerned. So where emerges the larger gap? Is it between micro to meso, or it is between macro to meso? So I hope you have received my question well.
Right. I won't say there is a gap in between micro, meso, and macro levels. Rather, there is an integration of all these three levels together. And if these three levels are integrating together, those are kind of generating different processes. For example, if you are kind of incentivizing a smallholder farmer in Kashmir to adopt to a particular agriculture policy, which is of course monocropping in terms of high density farming, you are incentivizing him, you are asking him to convert his land to a commercial high density plantation land, and then you don't have an institutional setup for that. When I'm talking about the institutional setup, I'm talking about cold storage facilities, a proper ecological network, a proper highway network, which can connect you to the local markets, or at least the national markets. So those linkages are missing in this interaction between micro and meso levels. And there is a larger kind of an import to export debate within the India also. For example, we are still importing apples from Washington and New Zealand. But that forms a significant chunk of our apple imports over the period of time. So that technically means that Jammu and Kashmir, or be it other states, they are unable to fulfill the demand of Indian market. Or it can mean this, or it can be put in this way, that due to these imports, our smallholders are suffering. Why? Because they are unable to reach to the market at right point of time. For example, if you look at the months, that is one of the other analysis that we have done. If you look at the months from April till May or June, most of the imports are happening in these 3 months, in these 3-4 months. Why? Because we don't have a proper cold chain facilities available where our farmers can keep the produce and later on sell them in the national market. So that is precisely the reason. So this mismatch between micro, meso, and macro levels is very much emerging. So that's why when I was talking about safeguarding smallholder farmers, that's exactly how you will safeguard smallholder farmers. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, I would like to have more discussion. Now let us give
Yeah.
opportunity to Dr. Jaskaran.
Yeah.
Please go
Please.
ahead.
Thank you, Firdous. First of all, I would like to convey my observation. Professor Mushtaq, I really enjoyed your lecture. Really thought-provoking arguments. In fact, it was the first time that I am listening on Jammu and Kashmir economy from the political economy perspective. And my query is about the surplus generation in agriculture. Like you are pointing out agrarian change through innovation, small farmers, and exclusiveness. But what about the generation of surplus? Like when we have to study the political economy, we have to
Right.
study the kind of surplus generation, not only in
Right.
agriculture sector. If the surplus is being generated, whether it is being used in non-farm sector also. This is the first
Right.
query.
Right.
And the second thing is about the class analysis. For example,
Class
you have indicated that there are some symptoms of deep peasantization in
right,
agrarian change,
right.
like you are not sure that the macro data will reveal about the deep peasantization, but uh, what about your data when you are analyzing? Like, is there happening something that this transition is happening from the lower peasantry? Like you are mentioning about 53 canals. You are, I think, taking as big farmers in
Right.
JNC. It's
Precisely
quite
considering the
different from
average
the
landholder
all
size.
India picture. It is quite different. But
Right.
I want that narrative. If you have
Sure,
some
sure.
ideas about if there is change is happening within these class structure. I want
Right,
two queries. Thank you
right,
very much.
right. Okay. Thank you so much. This is a really indeed a thoughtful question, because when we are talking about political economy, we cannot talk political economy without the idea of primitive accumulation. So that point is very well taken. But that's what I was initially trying to argue in my conceptual ideas about this particular presentation. Political economy has been seen through the primitive accumulation by Marx in terms of surplus value and all. Now, why I am not using that kind of an approach here is primarily for two reasons. One being non-availability of data, because when we are talking about broader research, we need data points to validate those claims. Second, it would have opened up the Pandora's box. And when I'm talking about the Pandora's box, it would have actually bring in the issues of class. And when I'm talking about class analysis, it would have bring in the same dimensions of political class, the same historical analysis of primitive accumulation. So again, this particular study would have been only kind of an surrounded by those ideas of surplus values and how the class differentiation is kind of giving rise to these surplus values. Now, instead, I am very well acknowledging those kind of classical foundations in my research, but I'm arguing that we are moving one step ahead. Okay, of course, we are acknowledging that in a very kind of an eclectical framework. Of course, we are arguing that there is this classical kind of analysis that is there, but now there are contemporary theorists which mostly which mostly work on this political economy of agrarian change. Also, Joseph Boris, and Barrestreen, and others who are contemporary theorists, which are mostly talking about that. Okay, there has been these significant changes happening in agriculture. It's a proven fact now, right? Now let us see how these global capitalistic markets, how these neoliberal economies are kind of interacting with these transformations. So that is precisely I found that this particular analysis will be more meaningful in the context of Jammu and Kashmir. And also not just meaningful, it will be less controversial also. Let me put it in this way. Because be it any research on Jammu and Kashmir in the social sciences, we have to use certain sort of limitations that we need to carry. So that was precisely the reason for using this kind of an new political economy framework, rather than relying on classical political economy framework of agrarian change. And that's why I have argued in one of the papers that it is the agro-extractivism that is happening in Jammu and Kashmir now. And by that agro-extractivism, I mean to say that state is now looking agriculture as an extractivist industry. That you need to produce, you need to increase the income. But whether that is happening or not, and what are the larger consequences for smallholder farmers, that is exactly what I have been kind of trying to study. So that is precisely my one of the kind of uh, arguments to that. Now, the second question that you raised about the prevalent about this land holdings, of course, we couldn't use the average land holdings parameters in national level because our land holding size is quite low. So using any kind of categorization in terms of marginal small and large farmers, national categorization that agriculture sciences are using, that would have been meaningless in context of Kashmir. because we were only taking one agroclimatic zone and then dividing it into different districts and then seeing the change in these kind of districts. And of course, when I'm talking, when you rightly pointed out that it would have given rise to peasantry, yes, of course, I agree. But as I was telling you, this classical agrarian question within the Indian context way back in 1960s or 70s, this particular classical agrarian question exactly raised this kind of a debate, where Bahaduri and even later on Gulati and others kind of tried to argue that to try to find out whether there is a capitalist transition that is happening in Indian agriculture and whether there is a concept of peasantry in Indian agriculture. Now, in Jammu and Kashmir, how can we conceptualize peasantry? That's very hard for any political economist because that needs a broader, not just arguments, that also needs a broader support based, a rigorous research of maybe 10 years down the line, which can actually establish that, okay, this is the peasantry of Jammu and Kashmir. Because as we know, from 1950s, when the Land Abolition Act was passed by Sheikh Abdullah and others, land was given to the tillers. So that peasantry kind of vanished at that point of time. But yes, I completely agree that over the period of time, with this land consolidation that is happening, it is giving to the rise of new peasantry. And with that, there is a deep peasantization happening also. I will give one anecdote. When I was looking at the census data from 2001 and 2010 census, 2001 and 2011 census, we saw that marginal labor population and agriculture labor population is increasing in certain districts of Jammu and Kashmir. And in Ladakh, it is decreasing, which is no one this was an kind of an argument which was given when in 2019 that okay, Ladakh is not getting a due share, and all those aspects that that were in the political debate altogether. But data tells a different story. Data tells that okay, there is a kind of increase in agricultural labor population and increase in marginal labor population within Jammu and Kashmir's different districts. Now then, many economists argue that okay, this is happening because people are moving back to the villages, and all those arguments about the data and other stuff. But I would say that this needs to be seen in the larger picture, that if kind of agriculture labor population increasing, that means there is a depeasantization happening. So that's I hope that will broadly answer your question, but I don't have any significant data points to argue my claim. So that's why I'm kind of working on anecdotes to make an argument here. Thank you.
So, yeah, if any participant is having any question, they can, just raise hand or. So let us take a comment. There is Seva Jilani. Modern educational reforms have resulted in the loss and degradation of biodiversity.
Right.
Loss of traditional Jenny Bank. Actually, she is not having the question. Then there is Raish Shah. He wanted to connect with you. So if I have any questions and want to work for Kashmir. So, sir, please, you can, connect with
Sure. I will. You can take
share
my
your
email ID and anything. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So before, I will jump up with one more question. I think,
Yeah, sure.
it should be there. So my question is regarding inflation, and we are talking about political economy. What I have observed with respect to horticulture, products like almond and walnut. If you see the trend, what is the market value of these, you know, Kashmiri production like almond and walnut? It remains, I think, stagnant. There is
Stagnant, right.
no impact of inflation as prices. So,
Precisely because of imports. That's precisely because of imports. California almonds and other.
but within J&K the price is very low. But once the product is exported out of the J&K territory, its price rises, it jumps. It is available, for example, almond it is available 900, walnut it is available
Right.
1100. So I want to understand what is the political philosophy, because I think inflation here loses its in layman's language, I can put it that inflation once it rise, it rises in aggregate terms. It hardly
Right, right.
matters that this product is uh, it is from the domestic industry of the Kashmir. But at national level, if you see all the agriculture products, they are having uniform, trend of inflated prices. But it has happened only with respect to these horticulture products. So I want to understand whether it is politically decided or dominated price, or market is playing any something, because as a student of economics, since last 10 years it is stagnant. So how it is? So there is some imbalance between, or it is genuinely done like this. So if you
Um,
can.
I think that is a wider debate in Indian agriculture also, the prevalence of middlemen and through middlemen, how these kind of production reach to the market. But I would say that I'm not sure. I may be making a very vague claims because I have not I exactly don't know the data about the price fluctuations and all. But I would say that we also have to look at the imports that are happening in context of these particular crops, and the imports are kind of better quality and kind of matching with the domestic prices. And then there is no value chain linkages between these two. Value chain, there is a value chain is missing in context of these, from pushing these crops to the to kind of in the markets of India. So I would say one, the linkages in terms of supply chain and value chain is missing in context of a broader agriculture production in Kashmir, which is of course with other crops like apples also, because we are still relying on this mandis and all. But the second point will be because of these imports, that there is no inflationary pressures in context of these two crops. And third might be due to the less production of these two particular crops. But initially, the typical demand supply argument will argue that, okay, if supply is less, the the demand should be more, or prices should increase. But it's not happening because there is an import substitution that is happening simultaneously. So that's precisely, I think, these couple of reasons are kind of responsible for this kind of approach.
Yeah.
Sir, I have a
So
question, sir.
yes, please go ahead.
Yes, sir, please.
Sir, since we all Kashmiris are producing only apples, we think that only apples are profitable here. Is there any
Right.
next option for we people which can give us good profitable? Is there a next option for we people other than apples,
No,
which can give
other
good
option,
profit?
it's we were having a very diverse crop diversity. We were having a very diverse field crops, very diverse horticultural crops. But precisely that's what I was trying to argue here. That over the period of last 5-10 years, we have completely shifted to something called monocropping. And this particular shifting of monocropping has given rise to different issues. It has, of course, it may increase the productivity, but farm income has remained stagnant. And even if farm income has remained stagnant, it has given rise to the de-agrarianization. With that, it has given rise to a depeasantization. So that's why I was arguing that when state is seeing this particular phenomena through a very monocultural cropping and through a very agro-extractivism dynamics, it draws itself a broader consequences for farmers. Whether we can switch back, yeah. Sorry, say it again.
I think this thing has made us more dependent now.
Of course, it will make farmers more dependent on the prices that are being set up in Delhi. It's a simple economic principle. So the prices that are being set up in a local mandi in Delhi will determine your income sitting in some district in Kashmir.
Sir, I'm asking do we have any next option that we can move out of this? We're becoming more dependent on. Yeah, you said good. You rightly said that we are dependent on Delhi market price of Delhi. Is there next option for we people? What we can else produce here?
I think that I was talking about the broader dynamics of food sovereignty and food security. When a particular smallholder farmer is kind of adopting to a different agricultural policies precisely for monocropping cultivation, he also needs to diversify his cropping patterns for the larger food security. Because Kashmir's economy over the period of 30, 40 years have survived only because of substance-based economy. And when I'm talking about substance-based economy, it has its larger middle class, which were kind of relying on substance farming. That's why it has a larger middle class base as compared to other states. And that has actually helped Jammu and Kashmir to kind of, what I would say, to kind of safeguard itself with different kind of shocks, be it a political shocks or be it ecological shocks or be it economic shocks. Till now, we have survived only precisely because of this substance-based agriculture that we had. But what will be the story down the line after 5 years, 10 years? That needs to be seen. Because obviously now we are moving, or we have already shifted to a very larger market-oriented economy. And if we are shifting to a larger, more market-oriented economy, you have to rely on the principles of market. You have to rely on the principles of demand and supply. You have to achieve something called market equilibrium. That's what all I can say about this.
So I request, Dr. Mushtaq, kindly stop sharing.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
sure.
request, meanwhile, all the participants, they can on their camera for group photo. And I have shared with you all the YouTube channel link. You can help J&K Economic Association, all the lectures regarding these, important sessions, and we are having different workshops on econometric, smart PLS, and basic workshops. They are free of cost available on our YouTube channel. So you can like us, subscribe us. So let us first take a group photo, then I will formally share what of things. Meanwhile, all the participants, if you are having more questions or if you are unable to ask here, you can reach our resource person, Dr. Mushtaq. You can simply, I think he has shared his email ID. You can
Yeah, I will
reach him
share it in the
there.
chat box.
Yeah, you can. So, and any of the participants who are interested to, share their research insights with J&K Economic Association, we welcome them. And we are also publishing blog articles at J&K Economic Association. You can share your insights how to make this platform very fruitful. So your suggestions or recommendations are welcome. Sir, are you
So
able
have
to
I
set up?
stopped my screen?
No, it is still going on.
I'm not finding the option to stop it. It is as background.
There is share button, so it is not coming.
Yeah, there is share button, but
It will be.
let me drop the call and I will rejoin. Is it fine or my screen? No, wait. It's somewhere there. Is it fine now?
Yes.
Yeah, fine. Yeah.
So let's take first group photo quickly, then I will formally. In between, if our participants are having any question, you are having last chance to ask, please. So we are done with this, photograph session. Now let me conclude the session formally. So thank you very much for joining us today. So
प्लीज इनको बताइए
yes,
मेल फिर शेयर करने के लिए
hello. Sir, you have shared email ID with the participant?
Yeah, I have, I think already shared my email ID in the chat box. Yeah, it's there.
Yes, it is there. So those who are unable to, I am resharing on behalf of sir. Wait, don't know where.
Thanks, sir.
No, I am unable to share it. It is
Okay, I will share one more email ID.
Yeah.
So repeat about your platform.
Okay, so yes,
What was
now
the name
let us
for the
conclude.
platform?
We are registered with the name of Jammu and Kashmir Economic Association. You can Google. We are available on LinkedIn. We are available on Twitter. We are available on Facebook. So I will be sharing more information. Let us conclude the session first formally. You can sit here and I will give you more information informally.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So dear participants, as we come to the close of this insightful session, it is my honor on behalf of Jammu and Kashmir Economic Association, Jindal Center for Global South, to extend our heartfelt thanks to all those who have made this event a great success. First and foremost, we express our deepest gratitude to Professor Ubaid Mushtaq for sharing his valuable knowledge and research on political economy of agrarian change in Kashmir. Your expertise and thoughtful insights have truly enriched our understanding and has created a spark important reflections for all of us to understand Jammu and Kashmir beyond tourist destiny, political instability in our region. We also sincerely thanks to all participants for their enthusiastic engagement and thoughtful questions, which contributed towards making this vibrant and meaningful discussion. A special note of appreciation goes to the organizing committee for their meticulous efforts in ensuring the smooth conduct of the session. In conclusion, thank you all once again for your presence and contribution. Let us take the inspiration and knowledge gained here forward to foster inclusive and sustainable development in our region, Jammu and Kashmir. Have a safe and a pleasant day ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you.